Welcome to the 4Q podcast. My name is Sheena Shui. I have a Bachelor of Psychology, Masters of Counselling, and Masters of Social Work. My aim is to normalise rather than pathologise life. And in this podcast, we talk all things therapy, women's mental health, leadership, and business. So if you're ready to learn some tips, tricks, and hear some amazing stories to really amplify your life and your business, let's get into it. Welcome again to the 4Q podcast. In today's episode, we're going to jump straight into how to heal anxiety, ADHD, distractibility, burnout, all of the things naturally. Now, heal is a very funny word, so I just want to say let's change that from heal to work on, get better at, calm down, whatever that might be. We're talking about reducing the effect of the symptoms of anxiety, ADHD, burnout that can be affecting our lives and affecting our functionality in the day-to-day. So, disclaimer for this episode is that don't just listen to someone on a podcast or on the internet and take that as the golden. Do your own research. And when I say research, do qualitative and quantitative data, right? So go on Google Scholar, go on science journals and look at what the journals are saying. And then also do qualitative data. So, go on the internet, see what people who experience these things are talking about and see if there are key themes in what they are saying. So always do your own research, always run this past your own medical support staff. So whether that's your GP, your naturopath, your social worker, your counsellor, whoever it might be, the people that you have around you, make sure you talk to them, okay? Now, we're going to jump straight in that there's a lot to cover, so I want to try and get to it best we can. So first thing you need to understand is that when we need to understand the causes of anxiety, burnout, and ADHD and all of those things before we can talk about how to address it. Because in where we are in Australia and in much of the Western world, we use what's called the medical model. So there's a medical model and there's a social model of health. The medical model tends to be individualized and blame the individual for their symptoms and their issues and all of that. The positive of that is that it's a more personalized approach in that it's addressing what's going on for you personally, but it also puts the blame on you for how you're feeling, why your brain works the way it does, all of those things. And that can be very detrimental because it takes away the environment and the context that you're in. The social model of health looks at what's going on in our environment. Why are so many people getting diagnosed with ADHD, experiencing burnout, experiencing anxiety issues? Why is that occurring? So the social model of health is excellent for looking at the bigger picture. Let's look at why all of us are feeling this. But what it does miss sometimes is that individual level. So as a social worker, as a therapist, as someone who has studied social work, psychology, counselling, my approach is I take the medical model and the social model and I try to include the best bits of both. And so if we can put this into a story, what this looks like is, let's say that you're in an area and 50% of the people in that community have kidney stones. Like, for some reason, this particular community has a really high rate of kidney stones. The medical model would look at this and go, let's see each individual patient. Let's see what's going on for them. And we could say, Okay, so you've got dietary issues that could be affecting your kidney stones. There's a lot of people in your family that have kidney stones. So it's very individualized. It's not really looking at the bigger picture. And it's not really explaining, why does this community have such high rates of kidney stones compared to a community in another place where 1% of people might have kidney stones? Can you see that difference there, in that it's not taking into account what's going on environmentally? On the other side, if we looked at the social model would go into a community and go, holy moly, compared to the standard, 50% of people, 1 in 2 people, have kidney stones here. What is going on environmentally? Is there something going on in the water supply? Is there something going on in what everybody's eating in town? Is there a diet issue that everybody is eating this one fast food restaurant and they're putting something in the food that's making people have kidney stones? What is going on here? And so you can see on that token, it really is looking at there's a bigger picture issue here, because so many people are affected by this. But it might sort of miss the fact that, hey, this area also has a lot of genetic issues, or, there's some individual stuff going on with people, and that, on an individual level, people aren't sort of following certain protocols or diets or whatever. So that's the difference. Now, a reason I bring this up is because for understanding of mental health issues such as burnout, anxiety, ADHD, these are all symptoms of being stuck in a hyper-aroused state, a survival state, a being stuck in on mode, okay? So these symptoms are all from being stuck in a high stress survival mode kind of a state, okay? And we need to look at this from a medical model and a social model, and we need to go, why is it that there's a huge uprising of people who relate to this, okay? And why is it that we're all feeling this in the Western world, in Western civilization, in Western society? So we're talking, this is a huge issue in the Western world, but in Eastern cultures, they don't have these same mental health issues, not to the level that we have. They have much less material wealth, poorer access to healthcare. They don't have access to things like therapists and things over there. So why is it that Eastern cultures, collectivist cultures, community-based cultures have far greater love for themselves, love for each other, self-esteem, self-worth, less symptoms of ADHD, less symptoms of burnout, less symptoms of anxiety, even though they've got far more things to be worried about, right? They've got far more physical health issues in terms of they're more at risk because they don't have, there's just so much more that they're exposed to. They have to really work for their food, for their shelter, for all the things that they have that are very kind of taken for granted in the Western world. So it's understanding that. So again, there are 3 levels that we need to understand this from: a societal level, a relationship level, and a self level, as to understanding the causes before we can look at, well, how can we treat this more naturally without medication, maybe. So if you have a look at understanding this from a social level, society has broken down in the West, partly due to capitalism. Now, capitalism, people, when they hear me talking against it and they don't understand it, they think I'm talking against making money, being a millionaire, having your own business. That's actually the opposite. If you have a small business, you're fighting capitalism. You're keeping money for your community, for your family, right? You're creating that small business stuff. And a small business is anything that earns up to, a certain amount of millions of dollars every year, right? So, a capitalist system is about profit at any cost, okay? So to give an example of this, recently I've got some amazing business coaches, but one business coach gave some really shocking advice that was basically pay a virtual assistant in the Philippines $3 an hour to make more profit. Which on the surface you go, okay, that makes sense. I want to build this business, blah, 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 blah. But how exploitative is that? The same work that you would pay someone in Australia $50 an hour for or $80 an hour for, you're exploiting somebody over there for $3 an hour, okay? So, and don't get me wrong, you can argue till the cows come home about at least they're getting support, at least they're getting money, but what we're trying to get at is that capitalism drives this survival of the fittest mentality. Now, remember when I said that those symptoms of anxiety, burnout, and ADHD come from feeling like you're in survival mode? Capitalism makes us feel like it's survival of the fittest. Whoever outperforms the other person, whoever outwins the other person, whoever outcompetes the other person is going to win, is going to get the bigger house, the more money, the better business, the better job, the better role. If you live your life like that, like you're constantly being attacked and have to attack, what do you think happens? You end up anxious. You end up distracted going, what do I need to focus on? What's next? What's this? What's that? What, blah, 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 blah. And then you feel burnt out. And burnout ends up leading to depression, which is a whole nother thing. So you have to understand that in collectivist culture, like in the East, where it's, we're talking India, China, Indochina, so Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, those countries, as well as Mediterranean cultures like Italian culture, Croatian culture, Greek culture, Spanish culture, where it's about the family and the community. How can we support our community, our local businesses, our local families, supporting each other, where chores are divided across the family. There's intergenerational support. There's aunties, uncles, cousins helping with the child rearing, helping with the chores, helping out financially, helping out with making sure there's dinner ready. That's such a different and supportive lifestyle than what we have here. So in those societies, it's about supporting one another. It's not about fighting one another. It's about going, what's best for all of us? It's about if mum or dad goes to work, knowing that the house is going to be cleaned by someone. There's going to be food on the table waiting for you. The kids are going to be taken care of after school by family and friends and cousins. They're going to be okay. Imagine what that does to your survival mechanisms, knowing you don't have to compete. Everything's going to be taken care of. No matter what happens, you've got each other. That is going to calm your nervous system, okay? Which means you're going to feel less of these symptoms. So that's part of understanding, why do I feel like this and how can I heal this naturally or treat this naturally, is understanding that part of the picture, that as long as you're in a capitalist society, you're going to feel like you need to survive. You're going to be stuck in survival mode. The symptoms of being stuck in survival mode are going to be heightened. That's the first thing. Second thing is understanding your relationships. So again, relationships is the second part of this. There's 3 levels: societal, relationships, individual. Understanding where your relationships fit in to anxiety, ADHD symptoms and burnout. So again, in our society, we don't place time or value or our capacity for relationships. That's not the priority. The priority is money and work. Unlike other cultures where it's like money supports my relationships and my family, no, it's all about the money, and my relationships support me in getting that money in a Western culture. And so because we don't value the importance of relationships, making time for relationships, seeing friends and family daily rather than just on the weekend, we're dysregulated. We heal through relationships and we also hurt through relationships. So growing up, if our families also felt that capitalist pressure of get money, do whatever it takes, I'm never home, I'm never around, you might have attachment issues or some trauma because your family might have provided a roof over your head, good schools, good education, all of that, but they weren't there. You didn't have someone you could talk to about your emotions, your love, your experiences, complex stuff going on, right? How you feel. That you didn't have that. You didn't have a spiritual way of looking at what's happening to me. This is all part of a bigger meaning. I need these lessons in life. If you didn't have that growing up, you're going to internalize all of that and you're going to store all of that. Like, there's something wrong with me. I feel wrong. I'm broken. See how that individualistic medical model comes in of there's something wrong with me if I feel this way. I'm not okay. I don't know how to make sense of this. If you don't know how to make sense of it as a child and then you don't learn that as an adult, you're constantly going to be blaming everything that doesn't go your way in life on yourself. You're going to blame all of your symptoms on yourself. So again, relationships are a huge part of the healing process and they keep us in the present moment. A lot of the time that the issue is with anxiety and burnout and, all of these things and feeling distractible with the ADHD or not regulated is that A, we don't feel supported, but B, we're not in the present moment. We're always thinking about something else. And the great thing about spending times with kids and family and friends and having fun is it keeps us in the present moment. It makes us feel like, wow, this is what life is about. And we forget that. We forget how healing that is to our nervous system, especially when we don't value it. So we need to come back to that. Okay, so finally, understanding the causes individually, you are going to have some genetic components. So you're going to have your genetic components, there's going to be your individual experiences, all the shit you've gone through in life, and the internal monologue, the internal story that you have running in the background in your unconscious as to why those things happen, as to who you are because of what things have happened to you, the experiences you've gone through, the places you've lived, the people you have in your life. Okay, so understanding your attachment with your caregivers. Were they loving and nurturing? Were they busy but nurturing? Were they loving but they didn't nurture you? There's so many combinations. And that impacts every aspect of your life, including your relationship with yourself. So your perception of the world and why things happen. So again, we talk about making meaning through core values, through core beliefs, through understanding your spirit and the way that you interpret the world. That's huge, because if you don't have a way to process when things go well, when things don't go well, when things happen to your kids or family members, if you can't make meaning out of that, that's a really uncomfortable place to sit. Again, further dysregulating your nervous system, which means those symptoms of anxiety, ADHD, and burnout are going to be more present. So now that we understand a very, very brief overview, as best as I could succinctly describe it to you about the causes, how can the way that you need to heal or treat or recover or manage the symptoms is asking yourself this. Pause, make sure you're listening, keep your ears listening to this. This is the most important thing I want you to ask yourself from this episode. How can I create a lifestyle that regulates me knowing this, knowing the societal stuff that affects me, the relationship stuff that affects me, and the stuff on an individual level? How can I create a lifestyle that regulates me? Question mark. Because even if you live in the West, even if you live in Australia like I do, there are ways that you can create a lifestyle that doesn't feel like you're in a survival state constantly, that doesn't feel like you're competing, that doesn't make you feel like you're chasing your head, like doesn't make you feel like you're in this survival state where it's the survival of the fittest, me, myself, and I. A lifestyle where fun, relationships, experiences, spiritual meaning, cultural meaning, understanding your ancestry, understanding those core parts of who you are, help make you create a lifestyle that you love, that creates meaning, that leaves you feeling happy and joyful and fulfilled regardless of what your income is. That's what we want. So I really want you to think about, what are the things that I can do to help this? Some really basic things you can do is not be watching the news so much, turning off notifications, making more time for friends, family, relationships, buying a support network if you don't have one. So it's asking yourself, can I reprioritize some of my income so that I have food ready for me and my family, so I don't have to think about that because that's missing. That support in my life is missing. Or cleaning. How can I have someone help with the cleaning in my household so that, I'm not feeling like I'm constantly doing all the things for everyone else because I don't have the support network that I am meant to have, like Eastern cultures have for each other. How can I make meaning? How can I let myself know myself better? How can I connect to my ancestry and my heritage, create spiritual practice? It can be as simple as connecting to the sun every day, or seeing the moon when it's a full moon. Whatever that spiritual practice is, where you make meaning, where you connect with nature, being by the ocean, that's the biggest one I can get people to connect with, is like, how can I rejuvenate my soul by sitting on the beach for a minute, by feeling the water on my feet, whatever that looks like. These all regulate you. And it's also embracing who you are. If you saw ADHD as rather than a brain deficit, but a personality type, how can I embrace my personality type? Same with anxiety. If I'm generally a bit more of an anxious person or a high energy person, or however you want to frame it for yourself, how can I embrace that as a personality rather than a deficit of some kind? Okay? And how can I build my lifestyle that enhances my personality rather than makes me feel like I have to change it to fit into somebody else's mold? So that is what you can do to manage your symptoms more naturally. It might also include seeing a naturopath, getting your vitamins and minerals sorted, because that's actually a huge part of your symptoms too. It's seeing a therapist like myself or a coach who can help you create these practices and help you see your blind spots that you cannot see. It's engaging in relationships, your friends, family. If I could get you to do one thing, make more relationships a priority in your life. There's a Harvard study that shows that the people who have the most longevity and the highest health outcomes, so they live the longest and are the healthiest, it's not from diet, it's not from exercise, it's not even from sleep, which is a huge thing. It's the people who identified that they had very loving, caring, and supportive relationships. Those people lived the longest. Those people had the healthiest lives because, as we've talked about, that regulates you. So I hope that you get a lot out of this episode. If you loved it, if you had some light bulb moments, please let me know. Share this with anyone who you know that needs to hear this. Maybe they're recently diagnosed with ADHD or anxiety, or they're experiencing burnout and they feel like it's their fault. Share this, because I want, if you're listening to this and you go, wow, this isn't my fault. There's nothing wrong with me. My personality needs to be embraced. That's what I want you to know. You're not alone in this. I have experienced all of this, and knowing that these are the reasons why, and I can create a life that supports that, that's maybe more natural, that maybe doesn't need medication or needs me to feel like I'm broken. That's what I want you to feel. I want you to know that's possible for you. All right, thank you again for being here. I'm proud of you for taking the time to connect with yourself today. And I will see you in the next episode of the 4Q podcast. Bye for now.